to participate in economies that meet those kind of regulations. And it, to me, ends up almost like creating truly, in my opinion, the most free economy wins. But it's got to be the most free economy that cares for the people, right? So it's like there's, that a whole nother time. I mean, I think I could probably sit and just talk with you for hours. So how about we start up a fireside chat one night and do that?
Absolutely. We have a great time.
That is awesome. All right. So we have a couple of, what time are we looking at? 7:22. Let me just check my format, see how we're going. Okay, well, we were already supposed to be about 5 other places, but all right. So we're going to jump into audience talk sort of real quickly, but I'm going to do a shameless plug before I do that, and that is to say I'm going to share my screen and say we are currently, I am currently working through with Tim. I'm building this little, writing this little ebook, which is about engineering for market. And it really is trying to speak to the heart of what we're talking about right now. It's like, it is about engineering. It gets into protocols, it gets into the rules. It kind of like tries to walk down the path to currency in ways that, you know, hopefully a lot of people can understand. But I understand this, you know, it gets to economics and technology is not necessarily something that we often talk about regularly. So it's a little bit challenging to, you know, write this text in a manner that really connects with everybody. But I'm hoping what it does, it connects with enough people that we can kind of come in from there. And I share that only because I say that I am going to begin asking for peer review of the text. So I can have a little bit of fun and say, does it make sense? You know, and I care. So we're not trying to be overly detailed, but there are those important details we want to make sure that we get right. All right. So that was my little, I guess that's our plug. That's kind of like the, hey, have you tried this mattress or that mattress? And they somehow get paid for it. All right. So tonight is, we're talking, it's family, it's friends and family. And we're basically saying it's a Q&A session, or we're just opening up the conversation to whoever asks and wants to tune in. And I'm going to be trying to watch these other chat channels, and we'll be trying to ask, you know, answer some questions. What I would say tonight to anybody who's on Discord, I got to close that one. Sorry. Yeah, whoever might be on Discord, just kind of feel free to message us right here in Discord, or just speak up with a question. If nobody asks a question, I have a few that I've prepared.
I have one.
Okay, who's I?
Hi, this is my name's Sierra Lavecchi.
I think we've met before, Miss Lavecchi.
Yeah, 1 or 2 times. Okay, so my question is the gentleman, it might have been Greg, he kept breaking up a little bit, talking about blockchain and how you're able to send 50 cents to Africa for less than a penny. And my question is like, what is the prohibitive aspect of like how we're currently constructed as to why it's so much more expensive? Because like I could Venmo Kids for Africa, let's just call it random whatever organization in Somalia or something, be like, hey, here's 50 cents, and it shouldn't cost any money. So why, what's the importance then of like blockchain being able to do that?
Sure. Here, let me step back outside again. Sorry. So, I mean, when you're talking about legacy systems, right, as like banking, Western Union, and all these different places, you have all these intermediaries that are taking a slice of the pie, right? So automatically, as an example, I have a marketplace that I had started for another cryptocurrency a few years back, and somebody was selling a song, a digital song from Africa, from Uganda. I had about 3 or 4 different artists on the platform. They're phenomenal, and 25 cents per song would have made a big difference in their lives. But one of the ways that people could pay if they didn't have this particular crypto was PayPal, and PayPal took every penny of that. They literally took every penny of the 25 cents, and so the person didn't get anything. So that's an example of a system that just because of their overhead, because of their profit needs. Whereas blockchain, you don't have this intermediary parties. It's a peer-to-peer cash transaction system. The original Bitcoin protocol Satoshi's white paper, that was the title, was Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer cash system. So where cash shouldn't, that should be just your daily, I got to pay you $5 back for this meal that, you bought me for me the other day, or I need to send 50 cents or $1. But with the blockchain, you have a decentralized network of nodes that are all maintaining this same ledger without, again, an intermediary party. So they are acting the role of a bank ledger. And so if I send, now this is for the particular protocol that I work on, which is Bitcoin SV. Bitcoin SV, although hated by so many people in the crypto community for probably lots of wrong reasons and probably many nefarious reasons, right? So Bitcoin SV is the original Bitcoin protocol. It resembles the white paper to the nth degree. I mean, to the top. It allows for massive scalability. When you have massive scalability, you could have microtransactions, because you could fit. Let's imagine a train car where you have an unlimited capacity for people to get in. You could lower that ticket price to next to nothing, because everybody can get in. If there's only room for 10 people, then they could charge thousands per seat. And that's what happened with Bitcoin Core and a lot of these other cryptos, is they actually started going the way of opposite the Satoshi white paper, which is they chose to make small block sizes, only a certain amount of transactions per second, massively slow, massively expensive, has no use cases to help out people around the world. Whereas Bitcoin SV allows for economies to grow, allows for massive scalability, microtransactions. And so I know that was long-winded, but not every blockchain will solve what it is that I was saying. It's only particular ones that are actually looking to solve this use case of microtransactions. So I can actually send 50 cents right now to somebody in Africa, and it will cost a half of a penny.
So let me kind of follow up to that question, Greg, because I think I can hear that question a little bit differently. And I'll tell you where I come from. I was in banking for years. I get completely the intermediary cost, right? But what okay, thanks. Huth just is good jumping up. Okay, so if I look at this younger generation though, who never has really experienced the, to her point, she can go to Venmo. She sends $5, $5 arrives to her friends. There's no money taken out, right? So to them, they're not seeing the intermediary cost. Can you help explain that aspect of things?
Sure. Well, I guess so. Two things I guess we should talk about, which is if you're dealing with any crypto whatsoever, then you have to assume that the person at the other end wants that crypto, and they have a way to use it without costing them a bunch of money to exchange it out into fiat. So if it's somebody who could actually work with crypto, then that's even better for sending it. As far as Venmo goes, I don't really know the international abilities of Venmo. Maybe you could talk to me about that. Can you send from here to South America with Venmo, or Africa?
Sierra, do you know?
I don't see why not. I could send someone money through Facebook Pay, right? I don't see why I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, so let me kind of jump in and a couple things here to bridge that gap a little bit. So there are these different rules, like even when you're in banking, going back a few years ago, you had certain ways that you would have to wire transfer, and then sometimes you'd have to wire transfer from one country to another country, because all of these countries have these laws about their money transfer laws. There's all this stuff about, money laundering. There's all these reasons that these laws exist. Some are good and useful, and others are more of the nefarious type things that we talk about. But what you're seeing right now, Sierra, are different business models versus different transaction methods. So you're looking at a business model, let's say in a Venmo, that in some way is getting your data, your information, and it's selling that information in order to fund its business model. I don't know that that's exactly how a Venmo works, but as an example, they're just finding other ways to monetize your transaction. That's kind of what you have to look at, is like in some ways, somebody's always going to pay for that transaction. Even in blockchain, somebody pays for that transaction. But the fun thing about the payment, and this is the actual cryptocurrency piece, is like we say, it's 1/100th of a penny or whatever it is. And the idea is if you can help facilitate a whole bunch of transactions that do a whole bunch of good for a whole bunch of people, and you make a whole bunch of tiny little amounts of money, well, that's okay too, because now the actual community itself is feeding itself, and it really is the difference between it. To me, I almost liken it to like a hydraulic system versus an extraction. The current models are extraction. The banks extract the money and then put it back in, and we're always being charged for that. This flips that on its on that model on its head and says, you do the facilitation, you the people do the facilitation of the financial transaction, and you the people handle the monetary policy, and you the people get paid for it. It's truly, and again, I might be off a little bit on that, but really what you're seeing, what appears to be a free transaction, is not free. I'm going to guess that like something like, let's use a Facebook as a good example. It wouldn't surprise me that Facebook actually just eats the 30 cents. I mean, they would, it's like they're doing a transaction, not doing it at 30 cents anymore. But, if we use a simple restaurant as an example, just so we can kind of back that up a little bit more, I always talk about, buying that bottle of water. That bottle of water right now costs $1.99, in part because that gas station that's selling that $1.99 bottle of water is paying, 20 cents or 30 cents plus 1.4%. Or I'm sorry, 2%. So it's like this, it's a cost plus. So they might have this 25 cents plus 2%. So that bottle of water that, we're buying for $2 nowadays, which is just odd when you start to think about a bottle of water for $2, but okay, whatever. We got $2 into it, and 36 cents of that, or however, well, let me do my math differently. 29 cents of it based on that 25 cents plus 2%. Would go just to the people in the middle who are handling the money. Right. They didn't do anything. They had nothing to do with the product. They had little to do with the transaction except to handle the money. And in all transactions, in every commercial transaction, whether you're buying water or buying a house, there are significant costs in the transaction that very often have little to do with the actual physical assets itself. And, Greg is here. I mean, he's in the industry. But what are the legal fees involved with transferring certain assets, right? And it's not that it's wrong that those fees are there, but they don't have to be anymore in many situations.
Well, that's well said, Chuck. I mean, so blockchain streamlines so many things that it doesn't remove all intermediaries, and you don't necessarily want all intermediaries removed. Like you're saying, Chuck, not everything is evil. Bitcoin doesn't make loans. You can't get a loan from the Bitcoin blockchain itself, right? It's not a bank. It's a ledger that maintains all the transactions globally. But other businesses can sit on top of that and make loans and so on and so forth. But I think to touch upon what you said earlier, Chuck, I think is a very important point. The reason why Facebook is free is because you're the product.
Yes.
Right. And so all these places that give us these free services, they are selling your identity, your information. And that's the same thing with banking and Venmo and Cash App. They have a record of your transactions within their company that they could do what they want with it. They could give it to the government. They can give it to, I'm not sure what they could sell to other parties. Because I'm not sure what agreements that we make with them when we sign up. But you don't have all those things. And that's not to say that crypto is 100% outside of government's hands. I think people are ridiculously ignorant when they believe that governments can't force court orders upon minors to, let's say, invalidate a pedophilia ring's Bitcoin, right? If you think that, that people are going to risk their entire mining operations of millions of dollars possibly to protect things like that, right? So Chuck, you made the good point also of KYC AML, right? Know your customer, anti-money laundering. We don't like it. because I mean, as people who are maybe aren't doing anything wrong, we don't like to be subject to this. But if we let all things be anything, then you have to believe there are seriously bad people in the world who will fund some seriously bad things, and they want to see that money go untraceable from one point to the other. So there are reasons why, I mean, just because we don't like corrupt government doesn't mean that all people are good outside of government, and we just should let everybody be free.
I mean, no, that's really good. And actually, this conversation leads so many different directions because there's actually governance in blockchain, and it does get very interesting. But Sierra, I wanted to ask you. I mean, this is a very long answer, but does that help to answer, or does it create more confusion?
So everything about blockchain is very confusing to me, and I have to be talked to pretty dumbed down with a lot of things. But I think the bottom line is that nothing's ever free, to include blockchain. So there's really, it's just a little bit less. Yeah, I'm really not sure what the word is right now, but I think I get the gist of it. Yeah.
A good word. A good word there, Sierra, that you hear quite a bit is it's less friction.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right. And that's, I mean, now the difference being, as somebody who's been in the banking industry and really sees it and understands that piece, when you look at commercial transactions, regardless of how small, large, or otherwise, there is a ton of friction. And what Bitcoin does, it doesn't just remove a little bit of the friction, it removes a lot of the friction. And the friction that remains necessary has compensation back to the community. And that's the big piece about blockchain and cryptocurrency that people have to understand, is that constantly the community, the blockchain is a community. Blockchain and community can almost be used back and forth. I mean, because where there are no people and hardware and that kind of stuff, there's no blockchain. But blockchain is community. Making no mistake about that. And unlike the banking system, which the banking system likes to be thought of as these deposit institutions, but really they're withdrawal institutions. They make all of their money on debt. Years ago, it was reasonable debt, but now they are always extracting. Banks extract from the community. Blockchain feeds back into the community. And that's the huge difference.
I think it's Alex.
Well, sure. Just look at how much money Facebook is worth and Google is. I mean, just take the tech companies and realize that I know that Facebook has Oculus, but let's be real. The majority of Facebook's money comes from the people, comes from the community. So when we talk about things like, making a 2% wealthy instead of the 1%. Imagine the world. Can you imagine what change in the world would be if we went from the top 1% to the top 3? I mean, think about that idea, that we're actually starting to distribute money so much that it's no longer concentrated among 1, but it's now concentrated among 3. That's going to impact the bottom in ways that we cannot even comprehend. And we're talking about not doing that. We're talking more like the 80-20 rule here. I mean, we're talking more about bringing that massive amount of wealth that's being extracted from the individuals, and they don't understand how it's being extracted and how it's being monetized. But all you have to do is look at these people who are worth tens of billions of dollars because of your personal information.
Yeah, plus the control of that data, and then to be able to manage what people see, what level of data that you want to share. opening up that level of restriction more granularly definitely adds a layer of security that we don't currently have in the marketplace in anything that we do.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, so when you create an account somewhere, wherever it might be, they own that account essentially, right? You're signing up with their services, everything that's in your, whether it be YouTube, if they cancel your account, all your videos gone. You can't get them back. You can't beg them for them back. They're not going to give them to you back. When you create something that you own as a space on the blockchain, a piece of data, and I appreciate, Tim, that you bringing that up, because it's not just Bitcoin, it's bit. Bit is the data, right? Coin is the coin. And where BSV really shines is that we're able to put data on chain, like a Facebook-like example or a Twitter-like example, where you own these comments. You could decide what you want to do with them, if you want to remove them, if you want to, in an ideal interoperable system, which we're all working on in the community of software development, you could take these comments over here or these assets over here and bring them from this platform over here because it's your object, it's on the blockchain. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Tim, that the data ownership is a huge part, and that goes from you owning your money, meaning like you don't have to wait till whatever time the bank opens to go. I mean, I know that we're in digital age, you don't have to wait till the bank opens, but stock market, you know what I mean, you got to wait till Monday comes. I sent PayPal to my developers out of India. It took 25 days to clear. The guy had to wait over 20 days for it to actually get into his bank account, and they still took $30 away.
And let's take that even a little bit further about not only owning your data, but and coming back, Greg, to your point about, you walk into a bank, or it's not a bank, an investment house, and you open an account. And this is one of the things I've been sharing with my mother, who worked for one of the mutual fund companies recently, or years ago. Yeah, like I said, I used to have my Series 7 licenses. But when you open your accounts in these other, the whatever brokerage agency, you think you own the stocks and the mutual funds that are in those. But legally, that's a custodial account. And depending on how things shake out in any given state, that brokerage account goes bankrupt. You could end up being the equivalent of an unsecured creditor, even though it was your money going into it.
You said it right. When you deposit money, $100, $1,000 in the bank, you don't own that money. That's their money now in custody, like you said. But if the bank goes under, they could use those assets to cover whatever they need to cover. And
people don't understand. It happens all the time. And the most recent one was in 2008 with Shearson Lehman. We're not talking that this is a thing that doesn't happen. It actually happens quite frequently. And in a Keynesian economic, it just continuously happens on grander scales.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. We have runaway inflation probably on the brink of happening with all the stimulus and everything. We probably, our greatest benefit is that everyone is doing terrible around the world.
That's right.
So we're all kind of in the shitty situation of increasing this debt. But people, it's a very strange thing how they just think it's an unlimited ability to print money.
Hey, it's a model. Right. It's and if anything, I am completely opposed to Keynesian economics. I think we can clearly see that all it really does is sets up the future generations for massive problems and failure and fraud. Right. Because when people are in debt, they're in bondage, and people act differently as humans when they're in bondage versus when you have nothing. Right. Yep. There's a real difference between having nothing and and being free. Like it's like I'm free. I've got a piece of land. I can eat. But when you're in bondage, it does something to the human being, and we have an entire global thing on that right now. And I think we might have answered that question. What do you think? I don't know. Maybe not. But let's
and then beat it a little bit, probably.
Anybody else have some questions out there? Bueller, actually. So I want to take. Let's see if Huth Solo can come back on or not. I see he popped in, but are you available to talk?
I am, yeah. I was able to kind of sort that out quickly. I may have to jump, periodically to help the engineer over here, but yeah, I'm available at the moment.
I can imagine with your network background that you are going to be wanting very close oversight as to what's going on at your house right now. I understand that.
Yeah, this is this is a pretty elaborate network, and so yeah, I have to kind of make sure everything goes correctly. But I'm actually not too concerned about it. It was just there was a question about how they were going to do the routing to me, and so I had to work through it. But
okay.
Yeah.
So a question with you. I kind of want to talk about like token economics. This is a piece of the blockchain that I've just recently started to kind of dabble in, try to understand it. I get the fact that it's, basic supply and demand economy, this kind of, back and forth incentive, all these incentives and whatnot that go on with it. And I know the stake pool is not exactly token economics, but it really kind of, it is, right? It's sort of, I want to say maybe the veins of token economics or something like that, as opposed to the heartbeat. But can when I say token economics to you, what do you hear, and what does that mean to you?
Well, okay, so you're right. It's what do people desire, and then somebody kind of invents that out of thin air, and then what makes it precious is the quantity that's available. So when you mint a token, the entire process is actually pretty straightforward. Nowadays, you probably have all seen Space Buds and Cardano Kids and all that. And those are made up of a handful of components. Somebody took an image that they made, which is really fun, and that's actually what people really want. And they place that into a file system that is reachable by everybody. And so then they literally create a policy that says, I'm going to make tokens, and the policy sets literally how long you can create tokens for. So if it's a 5-minute policy, you have a 5-minute window to mint tokens. You can make one or billions or quadrillions, but you have a 5-minute window. And when that 5 minutes gone, it's locked on the chain for eternity. So what ends up happening is people will make 100. Policy expires, and that's it. There's only 100 in existence. No more could ever be made. You could make a copy that looks similar, but you'll never be able to make another one with the original policy. And so you can tell the fake, anybody that knows what they're looking for. So what makes it valuable is the scarcity and the desirability.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think, for people tuning in, this is one of those pieces that's it's different on every blockchain. First off, token economics, it pretty much is. And I'll go as far as to say it's probably different with every coin. Like, let's say taking Ethereum, that has, BSV has separate. Well, all three of these do. Okay, so we got BSV, we think Ethereum, and Cardano. They all allow for coins in different stages, whatever. But I think that each coin can sort of create its own token economics and its own governance through their smart contracts. Correct?
So smart contracts is still kind of it's a new thing it doesn't exist yet on Cardano, but it is in the process. And that's what a lot of people talk about. Oh, well, when smart contracts come, and it's never coming. I've been hearing this for years. It's supposed to come at the end of June, and it's going to be rolled out to the testnet here, I believe, next month. But the way a smart contract works, it can do whatever the programmer can create. But kind of the big thing would be, so an artist makes a piece of artwork. Nowadays, if it's a token, they sell it, it's gone. You guys were just talking about that. Once it's sent, it's gone. I can't get it back. There's nobody that can help me get it back. It is gone. And then that person could sell it. And if it's now worth more, that's it. Best of luck to them. Well, what if you're a musician, and you're going to produce some music, and you're going to use the blockchain to distribute your music? Well, if it was a token, you sell it once and that's the end of it. But that's not really how it works. When you're talking about a movie or artwork or whatever, they go up in value. And, as the artist, they really deserve to get royalties. And so with a smart contract, you can write it into the code itself so that if it changes hands again, you are automatically given, a component. And that's just one way you could leverage it. And the truth is, there are so many things that are going to come out of this. We just haven't thought of them yet. I mean, the sky's the limit. We just, you have to people will just have to invent them. But there is going to be use case after use case. Once this rolls out and people start leveraging it, I think a lot more use cases will kind of develop.
So actually, let me kind of piggyback on something that you were just saying, and sort of a new visual that I had for this, for those who may be listening. One of the things that Huth just said was, now I got to correct myself. It's got to always be Huth solo. It can't just be Huth. No, I guess there was Hans though, right? I mean, Hans, did we ever hear just, was it solo when it was solo, or did we ever hear it of just Hans?
Well, that's right, because so in the Han Solo movie, right, his name was Han and he didn't know his last name. They're asking him, okay, so, okay, I'm just going to put you down as Solo.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So I guess for tonight's call, particularly, we can get you by Solo or Huff. So we're
sure. Either is good.
Yeah. So Huff makes a great point though about this idea that you can write anything you want with your token, and we talk about it in terms of like a song, so that if you buy a song and then resell it, that the artist can get repaid. And we get that one, and then we also think in terms of like real estate, and this is probably a fun one for a lot of people. You hear about like deed restrictions, things that go on your deed, right? You can literally, you own a piece of property in that deed. My grandchildren can have this land as long as they never eat pizza on Friday. Whatever, right? I mean, you could write some ridiculous kind of deed restriction. And what's interesting is anybody who then picks up that asset is subject to that deed restriction. These ideas are not foreign. So if we would simply look at this like a dollar bill, that when you went to use it, you could sort of write a contract on it. And every time you traded that dollar bill with somebody else, there were some rules that went along with it, as well as an asset. So it doesn't have to be, just a piece of land or a piece of art. It's really anything that dollar bill is associated with. We sort of don't really need a dollar bill when we have a currency that can also designate the identity of the object and the rules that go along with that object. Kind of sort of. I don't know if that helps for anybody who might be listening.
It's interesting that you say that, because you're absolutely right. When people think about crypto, they think about becoming a millionaire. They're not talking about becoming a Bitcoin, having 1 million Bitcoins. They're thinking about how many dollars are going to be in my bank account at the end of the day. Everybody still has that mentality that we're going to have to convert back to fiat. If for me to feel truly wealthy, my Chase Manhattan Bank needs to have dollar bills in it.
Right.
And it's just not true.
That is that. I like, if we could bottle that, it might take a whole generation, but we're going to have a generation down the road. It could be 2 generations or 3 generations. They're going to have no concept of how much money do you have in your bank account, because it's unnecessary. It's going to be like, do I have the resources I want to live the life I want with the people I want?
Yes. And that shift, and it's so crazy that Bitcoin is now 12 years old. I think it came out in 2009. And we're, people still see it as like this dirty little, thing that people play with. And anybody that thinks that they're rich, again, they're thinking in terms of, I've got to get this Bitcoin and then convert it back to dollars so I can now go live my dreams. To unlearn that, I mean, it's been 12 years and we still think in those terms. This is going to be one of those processes that takes, you said, probably an entire generation to relearn. It's going to be a very big paradigm shift when that eventually happens. It may not even happen in the rest of my lifetime. I don't know.
Yeah. I personally, I'm very hopeful. I mean, for the longest time, and particularly when I worked in bank, after I left banking, I think I was really, I don't know, like dejected about the world or something. Like when I really saw what was going on in the markets and the way things were happening, it's like, wow. I mean, what's the future look like for our kids? But I look at this and I go, I think we're fixing it. I think we're fixing the broken system.
We definitely have the opportunity to, I mean, I just want to make if I may, one comment which I heard um, been said before. Blockchain doesn't fix government; it exposes government, right? So it's up to us as people to hold governments accountable. If we could put things on a public ledger for the people to see, then we have more of a chance to hold people accountable, and not let dirty deeds be done behind closed doors, as you said, because there is a trail of record. If you, if we as a people push this upon government and entities such as that, I mean, to make
That's really important because I'm sure somewhere in my heart I would say that I'm a libertarian, but not all the way to the point, because I recognize government is necessary. Government is, it's good when properly implemented by the people for the people. It really truly is. And we can do great things together, and we need people to help facilitate that. But we need that transparency. We need to know, like, hey, who's getting paid and for what? And that's the real nefarious way of looking at it. But that's the piece. Like, why are we getting? Why is this legislation relevant? We don't need near the legislation that exists. And in part, but we're not replacing government. But I think what we're doing is we're going to self-regulate quite a bit more. We're going to kind of create, like I say, choose the community you're going to be a part of, help to make sure that the rules are followed in that community. I mean, that's, not going, we're not going to have time to, finish the stake conversation. So hopefully Health, you can come back another time. But, it's interesting that it really is, it is a paradigm shift. I mean, to me, it's actually, we're creating a new global culture, and it's the resistance that's creating the culture, which is interesting. Because I don't think most of the people involved in blockchain right now, I think they understand the concept of being the resistance, but it really is just about the freedom.
If I could speak to that just for 10 seconds, Chuck.
Sure.
So I think that, like, just Huth, Huth, is that her name?
Huth Solo, yeah.
So, she was making the point that Bitcoin goes back as far as 2009. Currently today, Grayscale Trust is one of the greatest holders of Bitcoin, exposing the stock market, I believe, right? That's how it works, is exposes people on the stock market to Bitcoin. They don't actually own it. Grayscale owns it. Grayscale was bought out by MasterCard. Michael Saylor put in 500 million. So you're seeing this idea of self-sovereignty and bringing, this resistance against the system. The system is adopting BTC majorly.
Right.
Like, and so so you got to question yourself, like, what's happening. And if you look at the actual war that went along during the time period when Satoshi left Bitcoin in the hands of Gavin Andreessen and Mike Hearn, the arguments that were, the Satoshi white paper, if you read it, they describe massive scalability. This 1 megabyte block size was a temporary cap on them until we got enough of a network wide enough where we couldn't get Sybil attacked. The idea was, at version 1, you could scale to past Visa and MasterCard. Since day one, we had a full script stack in the original Bitcoin protocol that was ripped out by the Bitcoin Core developers along the pathway. So I'm just making a point, I guess, of, like, we have to be really aware. Like, I've watched YouTube influencers for 5 years now, or several years, say, oh, Bitcoin or crypto is the people's money. And I've watched them day after day be excited when JP Morgan gets involved and Grayscale bought another. They're getting excited that the legacy systems are getting involved. They're mirroring the same richer get richer and the poor stay poor mentality when you have rich people buying up this dead weight digital gold that does nothing other than sit there, and it takes value out of the society. You make $1,000 this week and go put it into crypto, into Bitcoin. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to hodl it till the end of my life, right? Where did the money? So you just took all this value out of society. We need microtransactions, massive scalabilities to create economies for the people. That's why I'm so fervent about Bitcoin SV, is because it actually represents the original vision of massive scalability, microtransactions, the abilities for you, for us, this group right here, we could create a wallet and have token economies today. I could set up a wallet for us tonight, and we could have a whatever the name of this group is. We could have our own token tonight. And I love everything that Huth was saying about music and art. I wanted to make the point of, with like an example, she's absolutely right as far as the art. You could put 10% to the original creator always, every time it gets sold. But you could also, for music, you could put it behind a paywall. It doesn't have to be a transfer. It could literally be the ledger just determines every time that stream was streamed, that person got paid. And the ledger maintains all those transactions, because when I press play on the song, that's a transaction. It cost me 5 cents. You can't do that on Ethereum. It would cost me $10 to stream a song. But on real, actual, scalable protocols, that every single thing that you do could be a transaction that's maintained on the ledger as, hey, I listened to Tim's song and he got paid, and Chuck was the producer, and they both got paid immediately.
So I kind of, yeah, because we're at our 8 o'clock stop, and I do like to try to make sure we're respecting everybody's time. I want to say, Greg, that first of all, when I really started trying to understand the Bitcoin world and all these pieces, and I like, what is Bitcoin, and the whole idea that it's a store of value, like, okay, when I was reading that, I understood it. When I was introduced to the idea that was never the intent, I understood it, right? Like, okay. So one of the things that I truly like about the blockchain community is that it's just like the rest of the world. There are some really greedy people on it, and let's watch what happens there. And we'll watch, Steam It get hostile takeover by Justin Sun, and we'll watch how the governance broke down there and why didn't that work. And kind of an unfortunately good thing. I mean, just like mankind has had to watch all sorts of governances, rise and fall, and we're still battling as, do we want a republic or a communism? We're going to see that same kind of idea on blockchains. And I think that the blockchains, which like at least begin by professing the heart most correctly, and then pursuing implementing the mind that supports that heart, is going to win. And like, personally, I completely appreciate and understand your point about, right now people are taking money and putting it in Bitcoin, and what is it really? And I go, yeah, they're doing it because it's gold. And as a marketer, I'm saying, do that, right? Because I always heard this story. I don't know if it's true anymore, but I keep going with it, that like when I think Coke wanted to go down to Australia or something, there's no such thing as soda. So they went in with Pepsi, something like that, because you had to introduce this thing called soda. And, you got a larger market share once the market was aware of cola, right? So that kind of idea. So when I look at Bitcoin and I'm going, okay, that may not be the best utility in the world, but perhaps it's serving its absolute best purpose right now by introducing the world to blockchain. And then I do sit back, and I spend a lot of time trying to understand, if you will, the heart of these different blockchains. What I have appreciated thus far is that Bitcoin SV and Cardano, to me, do seem to be the two blockchains speaking in terms of making economies that work for the people everywhere. And then I look at that and say, my hat's off to whoever pulls that off best. Let's just pull that off.
Yeah.
Right. That kind of thing. So, hey, I appreciate, Greg, I appreciate you turning in. Solo, I appreciate you turning in tonight. A few others had to drop off. Would you guys be open to jumping on again?
Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah,
appreciate
it. So we're going to start so right now we've been running these about bi-weekly, and we are going to probably jump up to weekly, just so we can have more specific conversations, and we'll probably start moving beyond 1 hour, and we'll have sectioned off like what we're going to talk about in that time, right? We've been trying to compact a lot into it. One of the reasons we originally called this Thursday Night Social was just that at the studio that we used to have in Rochester, after we shut down all the cameras and whatnot, we would hang out and you know, if somebody brought beer or wine, you pour wine, brought a Coke, you hang out until you didn't want to hang out
Drinks,
anymore.
whatever, it didn't matter.
So with that, I'm going to officially end our Thursday night our show. But yeah, if anybody would like to stick around for a few minutes and continue the conversation, let's just leave the channel open for a bit and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
I'm going to drop off because I'm going to finish up this. Take care.
Have a good night, Luke.
And Greg, thanks for joining, and I am sorry for the late invite. I was over here fighting with audio. Like, oh man.
You're fine. No, it's been a long day. So I've been myself running around like crazy. I said, oh, wait, where'd the invite go? I didn't see it yet.
That's excellent. I really appreciate. And definitely. So you're in Virginia?
I am.
You are? Okay. Yeah. Definitely want to just spend more